The human mind is a labyrinth, winding, intricate, and often full of shadows we struggle to understand. Deep within this labyrinth lies one of the most controversial and unsettling theories in the history of psychology: the Oedipus complex. First introduced by Sigmund Freud in the early 20th century, this idea challenged the very foundation of human relationships, society, and even morality itself. It suggested that, buried beneath layers of social conditioning and personal denial, we all carry unresolved desires and conflicts that shape our lives in ways we barely recognize. Freud's theory was inspired by an ancient Greek tragedy, Oedipus Rex, written by Sophocles over 2,000 years ago. In the story, a prophecy foretells that Oedipus will kill his father and marry his mother. Desperate to prevent this, his parents abandon him as a baby, leaving him to die. But fate is relentless. He is rescued, raised by another royal family, and grows up ignorant of his origins. Later in life, he unknowingly fulfills the prophecy, killing his biological father in a dispute and later marrying his biological mother. When the truth is revealed, horror consumes him and he blinds himself in agony. His mother, overcome with despair, takes her own life. This story haunted Freud. He saw in it something far more than a dramatic tale of fate and tragedy. He saw a reflection of a hidden psychological truth, one so deeply buried in the unconscious that most people would recoil in disgust at its suggestion. According to Freud, every young boy experiences an unconscious desire for his mother and a simultaneous rivalry with his father. The boy, he argued, sees his father as competition for the affection of his mother, leading to feelings of jealousy, fear, and even hatred. But because society deems such desires unacceptable, the child suppresses them, burying them deep in his unconscious mind. Over time, these feelings are reshaped, repressed, and redirected, influencing the way he develops relationships as an adult. Freud believed that this conflict was a universal stage of development, affecting not just some, but all people, though they were largely unaware of it. For girls, he proposed a similar process, later called the Electra complex, where the child experiences a subconscious rivalry with her mother for the father's attention. However, Freud's theories, especially regarding women, faced criticism even in his time. Yet despite its controversy, the Oedipus complex became one of the most well-known and debated concepts in psychology. But why did Freud's theory shock the world so deeply? Because it struck at the core of human nature, challenging the idea that we are always in control of our thoughts and emotions. It suggested that our most innocent and cherished relationships, those between parents and children, were not as pure as we like to believe. Freud argued that even though these desires are repressed, they never fully disappear. Instead, they shape our adult relationships, influencing who we are attracted to, how we interact with authority figures, and even how we navigate love and jealousy. One of the strongest reactions against Freud's theory was that it seemed to rob humans of free will. If our romantic choices, our fears, and even our rivalries were all dictated by unconscious conflicts from childhood, then how much control did we really have over our lives? Critics called Freud's ideas absurd, perverse, and even dangerous. Religious leaders rejected the notion that childhood contained such complex and troubling emotions. Scientists criticized Freud for relying on subjective interpretations rather than empirical evidence. And yet, despite all of this, the Oedipus complex refused to disappear from psychological discussion. One of the reasons the theory endured was because it resonated, often in unsettling ways, with real-life cases. Many patients Freud treated displayed patterns of attraction, resentment, and psychological distress that seemed to align with his theory. For example, Freud worked with a young boy named Little Hans, who developed a deep fear of horses. Through analysis, Freud concluded that Hans was actually afraid of his father, and his fear of horses was a symbolic displacement of that fear. Hans, like Oedipus, was struggling with unconscious feelings of competition with his father for his mother's attention. Beyond individual cases, traces of the Oedipus complex can be seen in literature, film, and even mythology from different cultures. Shakespeare's Hamlet has long been analyzed through a Freudian lens, with some scholars suggesting that Hamlet's obsession with his mother, Queen Gertrude, and his intense hatred for his uncle, who takes his father's place, are expressions of an unresolved Oedipal struggle. In modern cinema, films like Psycho, The Graduate, and Old Boy have played with similar themes of complex parent-child dynamics, unconscious desires, and the devastating consequences of suppressed emotions. But if Freud's theory was true, does that mean we are all doomed to suffer from unresolved childhood desires? Not necessarily. Many later psychologists re-examined Freud's ideas, refining and modifying them. Carl Jung, one of Freud's early followers, agreed that childhood relationships were formative, but argued that the mother-child bond was about more than repressed desire. It was about psychological development and identity formation. Modern psychology has largely moved beyond the literal interpretation of the Oedipus complex, instead recognizing that early family relationships do shape attachment styles, emotional responses, and romantic choices. Today, attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, provides a more nuanced explanation of how childhood relationships affect adult love. Rather than focusing on repressed sexual desires, attachment theory explores how secure or insecure bonds with parents influence future romantic and social interactions. While Freud's theory is no longer widely accepted in its original form, its legacy remains. The idea that our childhood experiences shape our adult lives is a fundamental principle in psychology, and the Oedipus complex, in its metaphorical sense, continues to influence discussions about identity, relationships, and human nature. Yet, one of the most compelling aspects of Freud's theory is not whether it is scientifically provable, but what it reveals about the human mind's hidden depths. We like to believe we fully understand ourselves, that we know why we love, why we hate, why we fear. But the truth is, much of what drives us lies beyond the surface, buried in unconscious memories, past emotions, and deep-seated conflicts we may never fully grasp. Whether or not we accept the Oedipus complex in its entirety, it forces us to confront an uncomfortable but crucial question. How much of who we are is shaped by forces we cannot see? The ancient Greeks believed that fate was inescapable, that no matter how hard we try to outrun it, it always finds a way back to us. Freud, in his own way, suggested something similar, not in the form of divine prophecy, but in the idea that our past, especially our childhood, is never truly left behind. It lingers in the way we love, the way we fear, and the way we seek to understand ourselves. Perhaps that is why the story of Oedipus still resonates today, not just as a tragic tale, but as a reflection of the hidden truths that shape every one of us.